Welcome to Garden Crossings. I'm Heidi. Today we are out at the trial gardens for the Proven Winners Color Choice Shrubs. And I'm just going to walk through this garden today and talk to you about some of the different varieties that have winter interest. So we were here back in November and things were looking pretty nice. All the leaves had pretty much fallen off. But now it's beginning of February. Actually, it's more like mid-February. There's some snow on the ground, so I think that always adds just a little dynamic to what the plants look like here in Michigan. We're gonna look for foliage color, texture, and just see once if there's any stems that have any interests. Other things to look for will be berries or even some flowers that are spent blooms, dried on the plant now, that give a nice winter look as well. So we're gonna start right off with the ones behind us here. We have some of the red twig dogwood. This is a cornice. They get about 3 to 5 foot tall and 3 to 5 foot wide. They're hardy in zones 2 to 7, and they're a native shrub variety. You can see here up against the white snow how those red twigs just really pop. So if you're in an area like we are here in zone 5B, 6A, and you get some snow, this red twig dogwood really is a great shrub to add some interest into your winter gardens. You can see here it's planted in mass, kind of a row of them, and yeah, just a really great plant. In the summer, it does get a little bit of flower on it, nothing really to speak much about. So it's more of just a foliage shrub for summer interest. It really is shining here in the winter, and that's the reason I plant my red twig dogwoods, is for the winter interest, but also I use them for the cut stems. So if you're somebody that likes to create winter porch pots, this is a great plant to have in your garden, so you can trim a couple of those stems off and add some thrillers into those winter porch planters. Let's go take a look and see what else we can find in this garden. Here we came across a beautiful juniper. This is called Montana moss. These are fairly young plants because when they get mature, they can get about 2 to 4 foot tall and about 3 to 5 foot wide. These are hardy in zones 4 to 9, and they're deer resistant. So if you're looking for a nice evergreen ground cover, it's a cool blue compact spreading juniper with soft, attractive moss-like foliage, an easy way to add an evergreen color into your garden. It's drought tolerant, so that's really nice. And as I stated, being deer resistant, sometimes it's hard to find just those perfect evergreens that are easy to grow and also deer resistant. Fairly soft to the touch, so if you feel like you need to do any trimming or pruning on them to keep them to size, it's not a plant that's going to really poke you. So easy to take care and maintain as well. Here we have a little grouping of 3 of them, so something you could use as a mass planting, create a border in the garden. It'll turn out to be kind of a nice ground cover as they mature. So just a nice addition to your winter garden if you're looking for something evergreen, fairly low growing, or you can keep it fairly low growing, and just, yeah, a nice winter addition. So a question we often get is deer pressure, and does a certain garden have deer pressure? So this garden here is in an area where deer do live and roam. In the summertime, I don't feel like they have a huge deer issue. I might be wrong there. But for the winter, one thing we're noticing as we're walking through this garden is there is 8-foot deer fence all around this whole garden. It might be kind of hard to see. Maybe we'll be able to kind of see it there through the river. But typically this time of year, the river is frozen over solid. And you can see there's woods all on that other side. And I'm sure the deer would walk across the ice and just help themselves here in this wonderful garden. So the whole border of this whole garden does have deer fence up to protect it in the winter. And usually winter is the time of year when deers are most hungry because there's not a lot out there for them. So they're going to go look for anything and everything that they can find to eat. A lot of the shrubs in this garden are deer resistant, and I feel like a lot of the selections in the Proven Winner Color Choice lineup, a lot of them are deer resistant. Not all of them, obviously, but if you can add that deer resistant piece into the shrubs that you offer, that's just, I think, that much more helpful for gardeners that do have the deer pressure. So as we're walking along and talking about some of these plants, you may see that just a very fine fence. It's nothing offensive, nothing you can really see unless you're intentionally looking for it, but certainly it's there to keep the deer out of this garden. So here's a beautiful trio of rhododendron. These are a nice evergreen plant, certainly not deer resistant. I have these up at the Up North garden and they're constantly eating all the buds off of the plant. So I have mine, each individual plant, wrapped with fencing so the deer stick away. But rhododendron, like I said, they've got a nice, pretty broad, thick leaf that creates a lot of this winter interest. You can see here the buds at the tip of all the stems. Those are going to be the flowers for next spring. So this is a plant that blooms off of the previous season's growth. So something you do not want to trim in the fall because you're going to trim any of next year's flowers off. So just, I think the interest of this plant with these buds clearly here and ready to explode once the summer, or not the summer, but once the spring warms up. A great plant for winter interest in the garden. Here we have an example of a Panicle hydrangea or hardy hydrangea. This one actually is little lime, and you can see how the flowers were left on it last fall, taking it through the winter for the winter interest. So sometimes this is something I'll do in my gardens, is leave the flowers on. Other times I'll trim them off. Like you've seen in my other videos, I do a lot of my cleanup in the fall because I simply just don't have time in the spring. But this really, it does add a lot of interest into the winter garden, leaving these beautiful flowers on the plants. This plant blooms off of the new growth, so it can easily be trimmed in the spring with no worries about sacrificing any of your summer blooms. It's okay if you want to leave these flowers on your Panicle hydrangeas, because if you trim them in the spring, they're going to be beautiful during the summer. The next plant we came across here was these beautiful junipers. This is the Gin Fizz variety. This variety is hardy in zones 4 to 8, and it's really known for its copious amount of blue berries. As we get closer and look at this plant, you can see just the clusters of berries all the way from the top to the bottom of this plant. It gets 10 to 18 foot tall and about 7 to 8 foot wide. So this plant is a fairly mature specimen here, deer resistant. And the beautiful evergreen foliage is great for not only the summer interest, but also, as you can see here, in the winter as well. But certainly it's the berries that really give this plant its appeal. Talk about mature plants. These are some beautiful specimens of the Arborvitae or Thuya full speed ahead American pillar. So as we were walking through the garden, I'm like, okay, that's a pretty cool Arborvitae. It's got a nice shape to it, nice form to it, and clearly they're very mature. So this plant gets about 15 to 20 foot tall, and I'd say it's all of that right now, and up to 5 foot wide. Now, it certainly is wider than 5 foot. So I guess when you're thinking of the maturity of these plants, keep in mind it may actually get a little wider than 5 foot. But here they have 3 of them planted next to each other, and they look like they're probably on about a 8 foot center, meaning the stem of one and the stem of the other are about 8 foot apart, and they're nicely touching. So if you're looking to create that gorgeous hedgerow, full speed ahead is going to not only get you that really tall height that you're looking maybe to block out the neighbors, but nice dense form at like the lower level of the plant so your neighbors can't peek through it and see you. This is a great native variety. It's got a little bit of flower or berry on it, or maybe, I don't know, maybe we'd even call them like a pine cone, but they're super small. Nice soft foliage, bright green in the summertime. Here in the winter, they have a little bit of a coppery tone to them, but really this is a gorgeous plant and a super great specimen to show you what the full speed ahead American pillar looks like at maturity. This plant is simply stunning. So starting off the video, I had showed you the beautiful red twig dogwood or Cornus Arctic Fire. Here we have an example of a yellow twig dogwood. So again, this would make a great cut twig for your winter porch pots, but it also really pops nicely here in this winter garden. Maybe not quite as much as the red, or it just has a different look to it, but this yellow twig dogwood definitely has a lot of interest to bring to a winter garden. This particular variety here is about 6 foot tall or so, but really nice long twigs. So if you want that nice tall thriller in those winter porch pots, but great winter color and another color in the dogwood family. Another great shrub to add to your garden for winter interest kind of heading into spring are salix or pussy willow plants. Here you can see the catkins on these plants are starting to form. They haven't opened up yet. So as they start to open, they'll reveal kind of a fuzzy little catkin, I guess, on this plant. So these are all fairly tight, although I'm going to try to see if I can find one that is starting to maybe open just a little bit. Actually, here we have one. So this one is just starting to emerge, but you can see how it's got that beautiful kind of a gray look to it. So once all these buds just open up, it's going to be a beautiful look on this plant. This is the black cat. It's fairly tall, and you can see like each stem is very long looking. This variety actually has now been discontinued, but that doesn't mean you still can't add a pussy willow into your garden to give you some great winter and early spring interest. This concludes our walk through the river garden here at the Proven Winners Color Choice Shrub Trial Garden. Stay tuned because we will be doing more features of more shrubs up at the roadside garden. So like I said, stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to our channel if you haven't already and hit that notification bell. So as soon as we post our next video, you'll be notified and ready to watch more about these wonderful shrubs that add winter interest into the garden. I'm Heidi from Garden Crossings.